I'm VJ Hamilton, and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And I'm very excited to have a guest on the podcast today. I have Adrienne Scharli, and she is going to be sharing her story of how she was able to overcome multiple sclerosis. If you're not aware, it is MS Awareness Week, and I think the more that we can share stories of people who have been able to transform their health, the better. And also, Adrienne has now trained as a health coach, and she will be helping people to reverse multiple sclerosis symptoms like she has herself. So welcome, Adrienne. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, BJ. This will be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about how you were able to reverse your multiple sclerosis symptoms, because I know you experienced multiple sclerosis symptoms twice, didn't you? And it'd be just lovely to hear from you and your story. Would you be able to share that with me?
Yeah. So when I was 28 years old, I had my first symptom, and I consider that to be quite young. I grew up in California and I moved to Colorado, and I didn't have a lot of friends. My family was still in California, and I was working, a typical 9 to 5 job. I was managing a retail store, and it was a lot of stress, a lot of hours on my feet, 5 days a week, right? Sometimes longer hours. Anyway, one day, I had a roommate. One day I just woke up in bed and I was numb from the waist down,
Oh, gosh.
just totally numb. And my hands were numb too.
Right.
And it shocked me. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was feeling this way. And, I ended up calling my mom later on that day. She was a previous nurse. She was an RN and she was retired then, but I told her what I was feeling. And she said, well, I want you to go to a neurologist, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And this neurologist gave me some testing. He made me walk a straight line and did some physical tests, had me touch
Yeah.
my fingers to my nose and had do some eye tests. And, and I felt like I passed them all. And so then he sat me down and I said, well, what do you think's going on with me? And he said, well, if I can bet on it, you probably have MS. And that was a big shocker to me.
Yeah.
And, I got home, I was a little bit confused and called my mom again. And at that time, this was 1998. If you might remember, but, insurance during that time, if you had some sort of condition, your rates, went through the roof, right? A lot of people can afford rates if they knew you had a condition. And that's how insurance was back then. And so my mom said, she goes, whatever you do, honey, whatever you do, don't get diagnosed, right? Because she didn't want my rates to be too high. And so I thought, okay, well, what do I do? So I just lived life the best I could. I made a decision at that time. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to try to be happy and go on and hopefully this will go away. Now, back then, I didn't know what I did, but within about 30 days, it did disappear. And I think what happened, because I look back now, because I just changed my mindset, I decided I just was going to try to live life and be as happy as I could, and I think that had a lot to do with it at that time. Okay, so then let's fast forward 17 years later, in between, I started a real estate career. I got married. I was really happy. I had a successful career. And again, one day, I turned 45. 3 days after I turned 45 years old, I woke up and I had a blind spot in my left eye. So if I wiggled my fingers, I couldn't see them,
Right.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
On the side of my face. And, you know, I thought it was a fluke. I didn't know what it was. I thought it would go away within 3 days. And so finally I told my husband about it and he goes, well, why don't you go to the eye doctor? I'm like, well, that makes sense. I'll do that. So I did that and he, did testing on me and I said, well, what do you think's going on? And, you do that test where you look into a black box
Oh,
and
yes.
you
Yeah.
see these little squiggly lines pop up, right? And so that tests your peripheral vision. And obviously I did not pass the one with my left eye. And I said, well, what do you think's going on? And he goes, well, it could be one of three things. It could be this, or MS. And like, oh God, I mean, here we are again. And I heard that again. Like, really? So then he goes, I suggest you go to your regular doctor. So I did that. And then then my regular physician told me to go to a neurologist. So I did that again. And I'm feeling fine, right? I'm like, I have no other symptoms. Like, why is this happening to me? I was so confused at the time. So after I saw the neurologist, she said, well, let's get some blood work and order an MRI for you so we can throw some things out, right? So did that. And then she called me back into the office. I got my blood work. Now, the only thing I remember in my blood work is that my vitamin D was really low.
Okay.
And then she gave me my MRI results, right? So they got photos of my brain and my spine, and I had lesions all over. I mean, too many to count.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that day, yeah, she told me, and I was shocked. I was shocked. And I went home and I told my husband about it and I cried, who wouldn't?
Yeah, of
I mean,
course.
I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, what? I feel like I led a healthy life. I was happy. I thought I had ate a good diet. I always made sure there was a vegetable, that I made for dinner that night. So anyway, yeah, it was awful. So what she did after that was she said, well, I'm going to put you on a steroid drip. I want you to do that for 3 to 4 days in a row. Like, okay. So I did that. And then, she wanted me to look at different drug treatments. And at that time, I found out that the insurance I had did not cover MS drugs. And so that was really, at the time, upsetting to me.
Yeah.
And so after I got that steroid treatment, um, then I started getting this migraine headache that was unbelievable. I don't normally get headaches. And it just felt like somebody hit a sledgehammer on the back of my head. And it just did not go away for 30 days. And I couldn't do anything. And then all of a sudden I adopted all these other MS symptoms. So I started getting numbness in my legs,
Yeah.
started getting brain fog. I couldn't focus. I was severely fatigued. I was really tired. I just wanted to nap all the time. And I was in bed for 30 days. I couldn't do anything. And then I got stiff knees. That was a weird symptom to me. Blind spot didn't go away. The doctor said, well, the reason I'm putting you on these steroids is to hopefully reduce the inflammation behind your left eye. Well, guess what? My other symptoms came out after I got that drip. It was awful. And so during this time, I'm at home. But I get on my laptop because I'm like, there's got to be another way. Besides taking drugs, there's got to be another way. So you know how we are when we're diagnosed with something, we want to do a search and try to do our own, you know, um, searching just to
Yeah.
find out, okay, how do I fix this? And I came across a TED Talk. And VJ, you might have heard of Terry Walls.
Yeah, yeah, I know that
Yeah,
term.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I found her TED Talk. I
yeah.
found it and I happened to watch it. It's just 20 minutes. I think this came out in 2005 and I happened to find it. And that changed everything for me, everything. And so all of a sudden I got excited and, my husband was at work. This was during the day. I had dropped everything and I ran to the grocery store.
Could do you mind just sharing a little bit about what was mentioned on that TED Talk? Because it is, and I will share it with in the autoimmune forum, my group. But I think it's just
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it's a story of Dr. Terry Walls. She's a physician and, she gets MS herself and
yeah,
she's 45 years old, same age I was when I was diagnosed. And she ends up getting it so bad, she ends up with fourth stage in a wheelchair and she goes to the best doctors. She writes a book, right? I have her book, of course, and she takes all the best drugs and she doesn't get better. And so her story, she says, well, I started, doing an experiment on myself and I started taking supplements to see if that would help me. But then she discovered, why don't I just eat nutritious food and get the same amount of vitamins and nutrition my body needs for my brain and my body? And that's what she did. And eventually she got out of bed. And then 3 months later, she graduated from a wheelchair to a cane. She was
yeah,
doing her rounds with the cane. And then after 6 months, she was walking, she started riding her bike.
yeah.
And like after I heard her story, I'm like, oh my God, how come I didn't know about this? How come we're not educated about this? Oh my God.
But how good for you
So
in
yeah,
that moment, to
yeah, I mean, it was a
that.
eureka moment. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get better. I just solved my, problem by, if I start eating correctly, then I'm going to heal myself. And I totally believed it would happen. And it did. So, after 4 to 6 weeks after eating this way, and her diet is basically a paleo-based diet, but it's ultra nutrient rich foods,
Yeah,
right? So that's what I did. I quit sugar. That was hard. That was really hard, by the way. But after you quit sugar, you stop eating it after about 4 to 6 weeks, then you don't want it anymore. Because then if you start to eat it, you try it, because your palate totally changes, and then it's too sweet. You can't handle it. Like it tastes like poison to me now, right? And it probably
yeah.
happened to you too, BJ. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's my story. But then I wanted to help other people. So I wrote a couple books. And anyway, yeah, yeah. So,
Would you say when you look back that your diet wasn't particularly great, when you got diagnosed a second time? Is there anything that you can think about there? Because it says that, I know you said that you had a number of different lesions. So I just wondered, can you think of anything that might have triggered that, or do you just feel like you hadn't been looking after yourself as well as you could be? Because
well, yeah. Well, I know I was eating the standard American diet, the SAD diet, right? SAD.
yeah,
And that includes, I was eating a lot of bread. I was eating cereal in the morning, which, you know, we're not educated about nutrition. And so I thought I had to like reverse the way I was taught, because I was eating cereal in the morning, And that's like the three sins, gluten, sugar, and dairy. And I thought I was eating healthy, but I was actually poisoning myself. And so, and then, I had was taught before that eggs and bacon was a terrible breakfast. Well, then I learned that eggs and bacon are pretty darn good for you. So I had to like reverse and re-educate myself on what's healthy and what's not healthy. I was eating way too much bread and pasta and pizza and,
Yeah.
too much gluten, really, too much dairy. Um, yeah, and trans fats. I didn't know really what a trans fat was. And now I only cook with, avocado oil, butter or ghee. Yeah, so I mean, I've done like a 180 on what I eat and what I prepare for myself. And I wrote a cookbook just so I can help people know that they can eat nutritious and delicious tasting food at the same time, because I had a hard time with that in the beginning. Dr. Walls told me I had to eat a certain way. I did that, but it wasn't very joyful for me.
Yeah, I know. You have to like learn everything again, and it's easy enough to have a list of foods that you need to eat, but actually having those, you know, having the practical steps that you need to take to make them and finding convenient ways to make food as well is so important, isn't it? Especially when you might have fatigue or neurological symptoms or brain fog or these other symptoms that can come with multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune conditions. You just need
Yeah.
something simple to follow and also that tastes delicious, because I feel like a lot of people might just decide to eat healthy and they'll have just steamed vegetables and fish, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have that every day of the week, you're going to get bored. So it's just nice
Yes.
to have these options. So tell us about your cookbook, because it sounds like this would be a great resource for somebody with multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the reason I came up with it is I want to show people how, you can eat delicious food and eat healthy at the same time. So, I've got everything in here from gosh, well, here's what it looks like.
And it's called
Um,
Nourish Your Way.
Nourish Your Way. And I've got it on Amazon. It's 35 bucks. And, I've got everything in it from smoothies. Dr. Wall says that you want to have at least 9 cups,
Yeah,
9 cups of vegetables every day, and so 3 cups. But think about, she says this too. She's a tall woman and she's, I think, big boned. And so she needed that much
yeah,
nutrition for her body. I'm more petite, I'm 5'6", I'm small boned. So I didn't need that much vegetables. But anyway, I've got smoothies in here, and that was a great way to get my greens. So her basic diet says you need 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of sulfur rich vegetables, which is like cabbage, onions,
salad.
broccoli, asparagus, cauliflower, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And then she says you want to have 3 cups of multicolored vegetables or nutrient or vibrant colored vegetables like peppers and purple cabbage and yellow peppers and anything with vibrant colors that goes all the way through. So anyway, but I also wanted to show people that they can make desserts that are gluten free. I've got muffins in here,
yeah. Because again,
using almond flour, to learn all about gluten-free flours. Appetizers, bacon wrapped dates, yum.
they are so good. We call them
Love
delicacies
those,
here.
and then, how to make delicious salads, with blackened chicken. And I've got a bunch of dressings in here and, see what else do I have. Just different stir fries and beef
Yeah,
dishes. The other thing I learned was protein, right? I didn't realize that most of the meats that we buy are, commercial raised beef, et cetera, right? But we really should be eating grass-fed or pasture-raised beef, which is harder to find and it's more expensive, but it's worth it
yeah,
because this other beef or even fish, if it's not wild caught and they're human raised, I hate to say it, but humans don't know feed fish what they naturally eat. So if we don't eat naturally raised food products or animal products, then they're sick. And when we eat that kind of product, then we get sick too. Then we're not nourishing our bodies the best. So that's another thing I have in here. Just information explaining all that. But then desserts too. Brownies, brownies made out of sweet potatoes, and they're so good.
Yeah, that sounds great because I think, it's good to get ideas as well. And even, at the point I'm at where I feel like I have some really like lovely go-to recipes, I like to introduce a new recipe at least once a week. And I think when you're just starting out, obviously you'd probably want to be kind of trying a few others. But it's nice to get new ideas, especially when, I mean, my whole thing as a nutritionist is when I'm working with clients, it's all the things that you've touched on, but it's to do with nourishment and nutrients. And I think that's kind of lost sometimes in the autoimmune community because it's mainly focused on restriction, about cutting out dairy and cutting out wheat, which is obviously very important for some people. But the truth is, a lot of the time we have nutrient deficiencies. I mean, it sounded like you had a vitamin D deficiency. I mean, were you
Yes.
able to manage that, and what approach did you take to help to increase your levels?
You know, well, I knew I was low in vitamin D, and so I take 10,000 IUs every day. And it's so funny you asked me that because just this month, I from Amazon, I ordered a hair test,
Oh yeah.
right? So I plucked out 10 hairs from my head, and they want it from the root if possible, because that's your most recent
More accurate.
marker. Yeah. And so, you send it in, you get it back. I got it back like 5 days later. And I also found out I was still deficient in vitamin D, still after 10,000 IUs. So, like, okay, I need more. And so I'm taking more now. I was also deficient or severely low in magnesium. And
Yeah.
I was taking magnesium, but not enough.
I,
So
I think
if
you're
anybody, go ahead.
Yeah, Adrian, I think you're raising a really vital point actually when it comes to supplementation, is that actually when you read the guidelines on the back of the packet, as much as they should be followed if you're not working with a health practitioner, but at the end of the day, you need to get to the therapeutic dose that's going to work for you, and everyone's genetics are different.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't know if you've done any of those genetic variation tests, but I know when I did them on myself, my vitamin D genes were were varied. So it means that my vitamin D receptors are lower, and it means I'm not transporting vitamin D very well. So I just need a lot more vitamin D than the next person, and perhaps that's the case
yeah,
for you as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but have you done any further testing to see if that's improved?
Besides, I've done blood work too.
Okay,
But I haven't done blood work for a while.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So, how are you feeling today? How do you feel your life has changed? Because it sounds like not only have you changed your health and transformed your health, but it sounds like your journey is quite similar to mine in the sense that you had a career and a profession, and you climbed very high up that career path, but you've now decided that you found your purpose and you found your calling to help people
Yeah, exactly.
with it.
Exactly. I felt like I just can't stay idle anymore. I need to help people. There's so many people that need help. So, and you probably know this, VJ. Well, according to the CDC here in the States, 60% of adults have some sort of autoimmune or chronic disease.
Yeah.
60%. And then 40% have two or more. And that's just not right. I think a lot of people aren't educated like I wasn't. If I would have known all this, and if I would have known from the beginning that I can heal myself, like life would have been so much better. And a lot of people that I interviewed in a book I wrote, The Path to Reverse MS Naturally, I thought, okay, I had this idea. I want to interview at least 10 people who've also reversed their symptoms. And I want them to tell their story so that they can give people hope. And their stories are all different. You know, when we're diagnosed, we have so many different symptoms, right? We've got, it could be eyes, our hearing can go, our speech can go, our motor skills, numbness, the list goes on. And I just thought, okay, I want to get this out to people. So no matter how people are feeling right now with their disease, I want them to know that they can heal.
Yeah.
And it might take a while. You know, I don't want people to get discouraged because I think it depends on what level you're at. You know, if you're in a wheelchair, it might take you a while, right? But if you start learning the protocols, and it's not just diet. So I learned that when I wrote this book, and I just want to share it so that people can also learn about exercise, getting sunshine, getting out in nature, grounding. I didn't know what grounding was until my stepdaughter gave us a book on earthing or grounding, and that's when you touch your feet, your
Yeah, I love
skin to
that.
the grass, right? And you get all these benefits from it. It's kind of like medicine in itself. You get all these chemicals, nutrients from the ground. It goes through your skin and it just balances your body. And you can buy grounding mats. I sleep on grounding sheets with my husband. Um, so it's just another way of, you know, putting another um, something into your body that can help you heal. Also, you got to have good relationships. You know, you want to surround yourself with, you know, people that love you and support you. You want to get rid of ones that don't support you. You know, how you feel, like what when you get up in the morning, are you joyful? You know, your emotions and your mental health has a lot to do with your disease too.
Yeah, it does.
So
And
anyway, it's just more than nutrition.
but in that book, I mean, it sounds like what a great thing to do to interview people and hear their stories as well. Because I'm sure I just feel like we learn so much from other people's experiences and other people's stories. And as much as I, have my education and, I work in clinic as a nutritional therapist, I actually feel like going through it myself, as you have, teaches you so much. And we can just learn from each other, and that's why I set up my group, and I know you've got a Facebook group as well, because I just feel like hearing people's stories is where we're going to learn the most. I mean, when you were doing the interviews for the book, was there any story that really stood out to you, or anything in particular that really stood out to you that you can share today that might help people listening to the podcast?
Yes. So there's one story. And guess what? She's a functional medical practitioner now.
Okay.
And you know what's interesting is the 10 people I interviewed, 8 of them changed their careers because they want to help other people. Like just like me, right? So once you figure it out, you want to help other people. Anyway, there's a lady who I interviewed, and she's like I said, a functional medical practitioner. And she was telling this chiropractor about, her symptoms and what she was experiencing. And he goes, have you ever tried to take out gluten and dairy? And she thought, okay, how's that going to help me? And so she did. And then all of a sudden, her symptoms started going away. And, at one time she was miserable. She went blind, physically blind, legally blind 3 times. No,
That's,
sorry, twice, and healed herself back to health.
yeah,
And
wow.
now she can see just fine. And now she's helping other people. But she didn't know that diet was so important. And so now she's teaching people the same thing.
Oh, good. And I think with that type of story as well, because this certainly was part of my own journey and living with autoimmune disease for 25 years, I tried different things, but I don't think I had the faith in the process. I'll be honest, looking back. But when I was 30 and my symptoms got, to a point which I couldn't manage anymore because I had chronic fatigue syndrome, that's when I just thought I've got to have faith and trust this process. And, because it is a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, it sounds like your symptoms reverse very quickly. I would say mine was a bit more of a roller coaster for 3 months or a big difference,
Mm.
6 months even better. But it took a year really to see the long lasting results that I've got now. But I think you just have to keep that faith, and I think that's where a book that that you've written can really help you stay on track, because you're like, actually, if this person can do it, then I'm sure I can. And I agree with multiple sclerosis. Everybody's symptoms are different and everybody's root causes will be different. And unfortunately, this might not work for everyone. But I always say to my clients, you'll feel better, whatever happens. We might not get to the point where everything reverses. I hope we do. But you're going to feel better at the end of it.
Absolutely.
So many other things as well, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's also important is, whoever you're living with, your partner, your family, they should support you 100%, right? So if they're not changing their diet like you need to change yours, it's going to be harder for you,
Yeah.
right? And it's got to be harder for families, right, that have kids, and kids love candy and junk food, and right, I mean, and they're resilient. When you're young, you can eat just about anything.
Yeah.
But you can also teach your kids how to eat healthy and help them prolong their lives as long as possible, and to help them teach people, right? So I think being an example of, eating the right way and teaching your family, okay, this is the way we need to start eating now, because this is how mom or dad is going to get healthy. We're going to, learn together and have fun cooking new dishes. So if you've got support that way, it really helps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier about the relationship point as well.
Yeah.
Having those open conversations, because I find a lot of people, I'm not going to make it a gender thing actually, I just think a lot of people are dealing with their condition plus all the other responsibilities that they've got, and they're not really sharing like how bad they're feeling or how worried or anxious. And I suppose if your partner doesn't know or your family doesn't know, they're not going to be able to help you as much. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
you need to worry everyone. I'm just saying, actually, just being open about, actually, I want to make these changes because I'm not very well. And I'd love you to help, me with that. And as you said, I think it can be really fun for children because you can start like baking the brownies that you've got in your book, and showing that actually you can make healthy food taste nice. Because I think there is, especially when people are younger, and I certainly was guilty of this, is thinking that healthy food was not very nice. And actually, unhealthy food was like delicious, like going to a fast food place. And now I completely think differently about that. And I'd
Yeah.
much rather get some organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised, beef rather than having anything like that. But yeah, it's just good to have that education when you're young, isn't it?
It is. It is for sure. Isn't it funny how, we have to learn, we have to kind of reteach ourselves
Yeah.
how to be healthy, just how to live our best life.
Yeah. Well, Adrienne, I have loved having you on the podcast today. It's just been amazing to hear your story, and I'm sure people will look into the books that you've written as well. Because one, we've got the cookbook, which is going to provide lots of practical tips and lots of delicious recipes, and then we have all those inspirational stories as well. So I thoroughly recommend purchasing those books if you haven't got them already. And where can everyone find you? I know you've got some Facebook groups and you've got your website. Where's the best place for people to contact you?
Right. So I've got a website. It's called nourishyourway.com. And, you can reach out to me that way, info@nourishyourway.com. You can email me. Or you can get on my Facebook groups if you're interested in what I put out. I try to put out a lot of healthy information and information that'll, on my Emma site for sure, help people, stay on the path of wellness and get well. And that's called MS Support for Nutrition and Lifestyle. And then my other Facebook website is Nourish Your Way. And so on that side, I just put out a lot of healthy information.
Yeah, and we will put the links to that in the show notes as well. And Adrienne, if somebody has just been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, what recommendation or tip would you give for them at this moment?
I would say it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. I wish I would have had somebody like that tell me, because a lot of people just they freak out. They think it's going to be a death sentence, and it's not. And just because we're not educated, and that's why you and I are doing this, right, BJ?
Yeah.
So just know that it's going to be okay. And, the simplest thing to start, or simplest place to start, is your diet. Just try to eat a lot of vegetables, good proteins, a little bit of fruit, nuts, seeds. Check out the Walls Protocol book, watch her video, start that way, and it's going to be fine. You can heal yourself, and you can do it drug free. I didn't take any drugs except for those steroids that I was put on. I'm so glad that got out of my system. But you can do this drug free, which saves a lot of people financially too. So yeah, no, you can do
Great.
it, and everybody can heal if they want to.
Yeah, they're great tips, Adrienne. I always say my body has an amazing ability to heal, and all our bodies do. That's
Yes.
what they were designed.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story today. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast. And I'm sure we'll be collaborating on other things in the future. So take care. Thanks again.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time. And remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.